beast, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So I'm going to be flying the Cessna CJ4 from Tucson, Arizona up to Scottsdale, 122 miles, about a 20-minute flight. I'll try to keep myself moving quickly through it, but this is going to kind of be an emphasis on avionics for the business jet, the CJ4, which comes with Microsoft Flight Sim. Unlike the Challenger 350, which is the only other aircraft that I've ever reviewed for Flight Sim, the CJ4 has the Proline 21 that was actually released with Flight Simulator, and as such, it's a little bit more refined than the one that's present inside of that Challenger 350. As that one there had a lot of issues, a lot of things that just were kind of funky and they didn't quite work right. So hopefully this flight goes well. Hopefully we're able to kind of work ourselves through the avionics. And if there's something that you see, you get curious about, I have a question, just ask, because I'd love to answer it. I've flown about 3-4 different airplanes that have this Proline 21 avionics in it. It's in everything from the Learjet 60XR, Hawker, 800 XP, and at least the later Hawker 800s, the Challenger 300, the Challenger 50, Gulfstream 150, and numerous other aircraft. It's a very popular business jet avionics suite. So before we waste too much time, and I will be going kind of fast only because I know you guys don't want to be bored, so we'll try to be speedy. Take a look. A 7.3 just dropped in front of us. Awkward. Okay, moving on. So coming down here, this is your PFD, this is your MFD, multifunction display, primary flight display. This gives you all the information you need to fly the airplane. It comes equipped with a moving map down here, or if we want to change the format, we can also get an HSI down here, which has a course deviation indicator on it if we actually have a course in there. You also have a moving map that's going to be over here on this side. It does have different format options as well. It also has a chart option if you're in the airplane, so you can bring up an instrument approach chart and see where you're going to go and fly. Up above here is an ICAS, or not an ICAS, but it's your engine instrument information, and your actual crew alerting system section is over here, in which case it's showing just now that we have the parking brake set. But you can look at all of your aircraft instruments here, oil temperatures, N2s, here's your N1s, here's your interturbine temperatures, your ITTs there, all your trim systems, flaps are right there, and then of course your electrical, oxygen, and hydraulics all listed there. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to end up doing down here today is going to end up being in this box. So when you load up the aircraft first, when you first start it up here, this is going to default back to the status page, and so you can take a look and see when the database is, which is 11 July of 2024, 7 August of 2024, so that's when the database is current as of. I don't know if that's accurate, just because it's a video game, and I'm not sure if they actually updated any databases. I just don't know. But hey, it says it's there. Well, we're going to believe it. And obviously right over here, you can see what the actual date is. 31 July 24, and this is the actual time in UTC. So from there, we'll go into position initialization. This does have to get completed if you were flying the airplane in real life, but it does automatically load, and it gives you the information for where the GPS thinks the airplane is, which could be different than where the actual airport center is. So you are going to use this GPS position. Here it only gives you one. In the real airplane it gives you multiples, because it'll have the GNSS for number one, it'll have the backup GNSS system, and you can basically compare those two, and then you can also set it based off of the airport location. Because we already loaded in a flight plan, essentially a very basic one though, but going from Tucson to Scottsdale, we do show that in there. 103 miles is a direct straight line route between the 2 points. And let's go in here to depart arrive, and we shall select a departure. I think the Tucson 9 is a departure going out of here, and it goes to this fix called B-Ball, which we're going to go to, and that's going to be very near Phoenix, Scottsdale Airport. So runway 11 left is going to be our runway for departure. Let's see here. Heading matches up, so we'll click that, hit execute, and that now matches. Let's go back in here for depart arrive, and if we click on Scottsdale KSDL arrival right hand side, we can see that they're going to be landing up there. I know they're already landing runway 21 because that's where the winds are kind of coming out of, so we'll do the RNAV for runway 21, and there's a fix down here. So it says how are you going to get to it. So basically here's the transitions that go towards that approach. And you can do it with just radar vectors, meaning air traffic control, ATC, is going to tell us what headings to fly in order to intercept a course. Or we could just click on this button here, which says B-ball, which is the fix that we talked about previously. So in other words, when we do the departure out of here, the departure is going to drop us off on a transition for the RNAV approach to take us to the runway. Should be super easy. Very simple to do. There are also stars listed here. If there was one, we could put it in. If we had a longer flight, we can load it up. Literally, it's going to be click it. It'll drop in all the points that you have up here. If you have a runway selected, and there's actually a transition that will go from that arrival into that approach, you can just click it and you can transition yourself all the way from basically your takeoff all the way to your landing. It is not a manual process. This isn't some, hey, you click the buttons and all the gee whiz magic happens and then the airplane just flies itself to the destination, but it does work for what you need it to do here. So let's go back here now. We'll check our flight plan, make sure that it's in Tucson 9 to B-ball, that is correct. And then from B-ball, the RNAV runway 21. I could actually probably bring that up, drop it here. Doesn't let me do it, but we got to discontinue it. It's going to go to B-ball. If we come in here into legs, you'll see we're going to B-ball. Then here's B-ball again. Let's click that B-ball, drop it on top of this B-ball. Now we're going to that B-ball instead. But I'm not going to do that yet because I do have the runway, which doesn't quite show up, but it's there. So anyway, we're going to go to B-ball. We'll do that en route, and that'll work out. I'm not going to do it yet. Okay, so we can talk about the arrival here and the actual approach. We'll go through those fixes to make sure that they're correct when we get flying. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Performance initialization, we'll say that we have 2 passengers in the back of the airplane. We'll say that they each have 50 pounds of bags, so we'll call that 100 pounds of bags in the cargo compartment. And I know on this flight we're going to be cruising at about 22,000 feet. It's a nice low flight. The F stands for flight level, the 220 drops in here. You can also put in 13,000 feet all together as one number, but since we're going to be above 18,000 feet, those all become flight levels in the US. You could type in FL if you want to, but you don't have to. Like I said, F220 drops in, works, it automatically puts the L. This is how much fuel we have on board right now. Sensed fuel, 2,800 pounds. This is our actual cruise weight. 0 fuel weight if you take the weight of the aircraft without the fuel, so you can see if you had your passengers in the back, this is how much the airplane would weigh. Click execute, and we move to our next page, which is our takeoff page. Just note that you're kind of going always on what's on the right hand side, and this is all found under the performance tab, perf right there. Runway 11 shows up. That's because we already selected it from the depart arrive. We'd have to put in some winds, and I know for a fact the winds were kind of like 170 at about 12 or so, only from looking earlier. I'm just going to put that in right now. Outside air temperature, we're going to take it from here. This is the RAT or RAM air temperature. 26 degrees is what we're showing, and that is the surface temperature. I've done a little bit of playing around here earlier. That seems about correct. We go to the next page, and now we have a couple settings for the takeoff references. These are to give us the V speeds associated with our performance, and they're actually going to post right up here once we click it. So right now, the airplane has flaps set at 15 degrees. We have the option to do takeoff at flap 0 or flaps 15. If we click that button to the left here, we'll call that L2. It was going to bring 15 degrees and highlight it, and that's going to make a change to these speeds. You can see it again there, 99,106 versus 90,92. So we'll go with the flaps 15 speeds. That also gives us a slightly shorter takeoff field lengths. 3278 is what we need. If we go flap 0, we need almost 4,000 feet of runway. We have 11,000 feet available, but that is something that can become a factor if you're flying the airplane into shorter airfields. And it's not uncommon, especially in an airplane like this, to fly it at airfields that are 5,000 feet and less. So you want to make sure that this number here is going to be corresponding to what you need and what you have available. So here are our V speeds. When we click send, it says in progress. These turn blue, and they're magenta over here. In the real FMS, I think those actually turn magenta there, but either way, speeds show up, and here they are as magenta, meaning they will show up on here. They're just up here somewhere. Our decision speed, our rotation speed, our engine out safety speed, 105 is what we'll fly if we were to lose an engine after V1, and then 140 knots is our transition speed for our final segment climb. So let's see here. Other things to set up. Right now our flight director is off, so we're going to bring that on, and we're going to spin that up to about 10 degrees. And I'll do my best to actually fly at 10 degrees. We're not going to be listening to ATC because it sucks in the sim, so I'm going to turn that off so I don't have to hear it. And we will be climbing up to an altitude. If we look at the Tucson 9 departure, I think it was Tucson 9. Yeah, the Tucson 9 departure. Our top altitude is 17,000 feet. So that's the altitude that we would actually be climbing up to based off of the departure procedure. And I'm going to see if I can link that so that you guys can pull up that departure procedure yourselves, and then you'll be able to see, you know, what it says. That was much quicker. I should have done it that way the whole time. Just an aside, on the flight guidance controller, that's this panel right here. This is what you use to control the autopilot in this aircraft. It's very similar to the flight guidance controller that you would use to control the autopilot in, say, the Airbus or the 737, but there are various differences between both of those. They're all a little bit different, but the ideas are basically the same. Over here on the left-hand side is controlling the flight director for the left. This one will control the flight director for the right. On the other hand, because it's a sim, if I turn that off, it turns it off on both of them. That's because it's a simism. In real airplanes, you can separate those. I can have a flight director on the captain's side while the first officer does not, and vice versa. Vertical speed is right here. This is a vertical speed climbing mode or descending mode, and then you have VNAV function, which is also a vertical mode for navigation. We'll talk about that as we go. Flight level change, speed mode, used for climb or descent. These are your lateral navigation modes. You have nav, heading, approach. There's a half bank, which limits the amount of bank that the airplane's going to be able to fly, use it at higher altitudes. And then we have a back course button. Rarely gets used, is to fly a localizer back course approach. Like I said, very rarely used. Altitude select button, which means actually you'll hold whatever altitude you're at when you hit it. This is your altitude selector. Yaw dampener, autopilot transfer, which sends this little arrow here to the other side so that the other pilot will have the autopilot on their side. Autopilot, this is the autopilot disconnect, and that's the other flight director, as I already told you. This controller panel up here actually controls all the information that's presented on the PFD. Specifically, the range here is useful, which is the little knob on the inside. The barrel the barrel nav here, this is for setting your field elevation based off of barometric pressure. 3004 is what it is. I just hit B, but you can scroll it left or right and it works. You'll also press when we transition to go through 18,000 feet. This will change your nav sources. This one here is your PFD menu. You can bring up a bunch of extra stuff, configurations. There are overlays that can go on here if you want to have them. Right now we have a CDI, so we're not going to have the overlays. Close it back out. This is the timer for the clock, which should show up right there, but I don't see it. Oh, there it was. It's right here on this corner. All right. Normally for mine, I think it's over here. Format, which is actually going to change what you're seeing. There's the blob of all the terrain, and then we should be able to turn off the terrain. This is now the weather mode, but the radar menu does not work, so I can't click it and turn it on. So we're going to go back to terrain so that at least it's useful information. But I'm going to change this format back to this, and over here, I am more than happy to have terrain on this one. So now we have terrain again. All right, I think I've talked enough. We have the flight plan in. We have the altitude for the top altitude, 17,000 feet. We're going to be leaving off with this runway here. I'm going to center up this heading bug. We're going to remove the brake. And before we have to deal with too much more talking, let's get flying. We'll talk the rest in the air. Power's coming up. Takeoff power is set. Airspeed's alive. You'll see it move in the middle first, and then it's going to catch up here on our PFD. 80 knots, so we'll only be aborting for any type of big functions. V1 and rotate. We are now pitching the airplane up. Airplane's got a positive climb. Gear's coming up. Put it in the V-bars. Both engines are functioning, so we got right through our V2 speeds, our FTO speeds, very quickly. There's our flap 35 speed, maximum. 400 feet. Flaps are coming up. There's our max speed for flaps 15, which our flaps are already on the move. They are showing 0 right now. And we'll start making a left-hand turn to join that course. We'll hit nav. And as I make this turn back around, looks like we're all clear here. Sync up that heading bug. Keep an eye on the terrain. And kind of keeping the speed a little bit low here. 200 knots is perfectly fine for this. Take that heading bug, I'm going to spin that all the way around to here, and I'm actually going to go ahead back down, and we're going to hit direct B-ball. Let's go to the second one, as that is the one that I'd actually like to go to anyway. All right, nav's going again. Gears up, flaps are up. We're navigating to B-ball, we're in the turn. There's the airport that we left from. About to come through 10,000 feet. If you've never been to Tucson, I highly recommend it. I came down here, my first time was to do Lear 60 school, ages upon ages ago, but so it was 2015. Great town, absolutely awesome place. Absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite little desert towns. It's not even that little, but it's an awesome place. All right. So let's go ahead and bring the nose down a little bit here. I'm flying the airplane still in pitch mode, which is the most basic form of autopilot, and I'm just using the, I have a pitch sync button here on my stick, which I click, automatically brings the V-bars back to where I'm at. We're through 11,000 feet, so once you're above 10, you're not speed restricted to 10 or to 250 knots anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll let the airplane accelerate. And it's still climbing really well. I mean, if you look right here, you're seeing 2,800, 3,000 feet a minute right now at that pitch attitude. But like I said, I'm hand flying the airplane. I'm simply using the V-bars as a backup to kind of keep me honest for what it is that I'm trying to make the airplane do. But here in a second, we'll go ahead and turn the autopilot on so that I can look down in the box a little bit more and do some of that fake flying stuff. So we'll come over here, autopilot button here, it's on. Autopilot shows up. It's now going to fly based off of that pitch bar. So it's going to fly in pitch. And if I was to click that up, it's actually going to raise those V-bars. You can see them going up ever so slightly. And it's an incredibly uncomfortable way to fly an airplane with passengers in the back. Each click of the V-bar was going to increase the pitch attitude, if memory serves me right, by about 1/2 degree, which doesn't sound like much, but it is enough that it's noticeable. So I will pitch sync it and then let the airplane fly in that mode, but I will never try to control it based off of that. You can also use this button here, FLC, which is called flight level change. Some guys call it felch, but what it's used for is controlling the airplane based off of speed. So if I was to click felch, it's going to try to maintain 290 knots. 16,000 for 17,000. We'll say that ATC's cleared us all the way up to 22. So let's go ahead and increase that to flight level 220 right there. Now, if you have felch engaged like we do right now, it's showing 292 knots is what we have set. If I was to decrease that number, say to 280 knots, the airplane is going to pitch up in an attempt to maintain that. As the nose comes up, the airspeed is going to decrease. We already have climb power set, so the airplane is going to pitch up in an attempt to maintain 280 knots. Once it's attained that, it's going to pitch the nose back down in an attempt to maintain it. So you're going to see this vertical speed change quite a bit as we go up. All right, there's 18,000 feet. Lights are coming off. Pitot heats are cold. We don't want that. Pitot heats are going to be back on. And we'll let the airplane continue to climb up at 280 knots. So that's another way to control control your climb rate in a in this type of flight management system and this type of flight guidance controller. So utilizing these buttons up here, obviously, and like I said, right now we're in flight level change mode, it's going to maintain a speed. The third way to control your vertical speed is with this button, VS, which stands for, you guess it, vertical speed. In which case now you can scroll up, which will lower the climb rate, or scroll down, which will make the climb rate go up. That'll increase and decrease the climb rate. So now you're showing 2,400 foot per minute climb. It will try to maintain this 2,400 foot per minute climb all the way to 22,000 feet, which in this airplane at this altitude won't be a problem. Now, if you were to get here, this is how pilots get themselves in trouble on occasion. If you start flying it in vertical speed mode up to say, oh, I don't know, 40,000 feet, it will work just fine, but you've got to maintain, you've got to monitor it. So as long as you're doing your job, 21,000 for 22,000 feet, as long as you're doing your job flying the airplane, you will be able to control it without any problem. It's incredibly smooth, unlike flight level change, which does hunt for airspeeds, and unlike pitch, which you could feel the pitching moment changes inside of the cockpit of the airplane, which kind of annoys the passengers in the back. There's Al's cap. But if you're using vertical speed, you just have to maintain awareness as to what the aircraft's trying to do. Because if you lose that awareness, if you lose that sense of what's happening, pilots have been known to get up to altitude with an airplane attempting to maintain, not even attempting, maintaining a climb rate until it can't anymore, and it'll maintain it right until the point that you have slowed and lost all this airspeed, and now you're at the low speed queue and you're dealing with a high altitude stall, which is incredibly dangerous. But more important than that, it's one of those situations where that loss of situational awareness results in you now having to descend. This is very awkward out here. Something making clicky noises in my cockpit. Which has me thinking that some system on my flight stick apparently might be clicking and noticing. Anyway, we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so what we're doing, like I said, you've got to pay attention to it if you're in vertical speed mode. Just note that. Pay attention, and you won't have a problem. So here in about 2 seconds, we're actually going to start our descent back down to altitude. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up this approach, and like I said, I will attempt to load that in so that you guys can see it. But going to Scottsdale, shooting this RNAV approach for runway 21, RNAV 21. Will not be the RNP version though. Let's see. Oh, maybe that's the only one we have. Let's look. Yeah, goes from B-ball. Okay. So B-ball is at 6,000 feet. That shows up at 6,000 feet in there. I wonder if I'll be able to hit direct to that, execute. It gives it to me. Let's VNAV it. We'll start a descent. We're going down to 6,000 set. We're going to try one more time because now the path is below the airplane. So let's hit it again. Execute. There we go. VPath captured. Works perfect. So now the airplane is going to make this descent down to 6,000 feet, which is shown here in magenta, which is the altitude that we need to be at when we come into B-ball. It's a massive descent here, what, 3,000, 3,500 feet per minute. But it's a short flight. And I bet if we were to look out there, we might almost even start to get to see the town of Phoenix if the weather's good enough to be able to start picking it out. So looking at this approach, we're going to be coming over B-ball, then we're going to go to Nave, which is a mandatory altitude of 6,000 feet. Freeman has a mandatory altitude of 5,000 feet. Both of those match up. Let's continue. First, mandatory altitude of 4,000 feet. Our next fix after those is going to be class, 4,000 feet. It's going to be a turn towards Willem. Then we're going to go to Eager. Eager's going to be at 3,300 feet. Willem's also at or above 4,000 feet. Then Dano, 2227, that matches. And then into the runway, 212 for the final approach course. This thing's going to, that says 214, but I trust it's going to be okay for this. This thing's going to take us all the way into the runway. It's going to be great. It's an awesome approach. This should work out really well. All right, so we're coming back through 18,000 feet. Make sure that we have our lights back on, and let's get ourselves an altimeter setting that's going to work. So right now, 18.6 is going to be the frequency for the ATIS at Scottsdale.
Oscar 0100 Zulu. Wind 137 at 8. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature tree. Dew point 10. Altimeter 29.82.
All right, 2982 is the meter. Scroll that in.
VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back fold short instructions.
And we'll click it. All right, that has now switched.
On initial contact, you have Oscar. Scottsdale Airport information Oscar 0100 Zulu. Wind 137 at 8. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature tree. Dew point 10. Altimeter 29.82.
All right, now I'm going to put in a little bit of information here. 33 is the temperature. I heard 180 at 8, I thought. Actually, you know, I'm going to stop that. I'll listen to that one more time. All right, let's see if we can make this altitude at Nave.
Scottsdale Airport information Oscar 0100 Zulu. Wind 138 at 8. Visibility
138 at 8.
Sky condition clear.
Yeah, one not headroom.
Temperature tree.
All right.
Dew point
So
10.
here's our landing field length,
Altimeter
3,100 feet.
Visual
Rough speed of
runway
100,
21 in
approach
use.
speed of 106.
Landing
We'll
and
send that.
departing runway 21. VFR aircraft say direction of flight.
So we're going down to Nave. Nave is 6,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and set our bottom altitude here, because at this point here we're already on the approach. Turn that off so we don't have to keep listening to him talk. We've got our information in as terms of the weather. So the bottom altitude that we're going to be going to in this approach is, if we go all the way to the FAF, we could put in 3,300 feet. We could also go lower than that. We could put in, since we would have already been cleared for the approach, we could put in the bottom of the approach, which has an altitude of 1948. This should select the lowest altitude inside of the FMS, but I don't think it's going to, because I don't think that functionality is really here. So I'm just going to put in, let's see, I guess 1900. We'll have to put in 2,000 feet. 2227, yeah, it actually doesn't give us the other one here. But that's a Dano, the runway. It's going to take us all the way to the ground. So we're currently shooting this. We're on nav. I could actually hit approach if I wanted to. We're already in VNAV. There's really nothing to do. Airplane's going to fly itself all the way down. Speed's good. We're underneath 10,000 feet, underneath 250 knots. We're going to hit Nave at 6, because we're already on that particular part of the arrival. Take a look over here, see if we see anything. It's kind of cool looking here in the valley. Make sure that parking brake's off. That would have been bad. All right, and yeah. There's Phoenix Sky Harbor right over there to the left. So as we pass Nave, that's going to be the last altitude that we have until we get to Freeman, which is going to be at 5,000 feet. This altitude should update to show the next altitude on the approach. As you can tell right here, it's going to fly this entire arc all the way around. Now what's cool, I'm going to try my best to not have to do any type of intervention. And because we've already started this approach, we're descending down to this point, it's going to basically be a watch and monitor to make sure that it's going to do everything that we want it to do. All right, so now we're 7,000 for 6,000. That's at Nave. We will get a smart turn, so it's going to look as if we actually don't hit the altitude. We're going to start that turn without it. But here it comes. You're going to start that turn before it says you've leveled off at the altitude, which is perfectly okay. It's designed as part of the approach. So 6,000 feet, we're still here going down. This thing here did a VALTS cap. It should not have. That should transition to 5. There's 5,000 VALTS cap. Let's see if it transitions me down, because that is a mandatory altitude. And if you look here, we actually have a TOD, T-O-D, which is our top of descent. So it's going to begin down at this point before Freeman to start working its way down to 5,000 feet at Freeman, because that is a mandatory altitude once again. And if we were to look over here to the right, we might see an airport. Looks like it might be down there in some haze. But Scottsdale should be right over that way. Just not seeing it quite yet. So yeah, the functionality, and I'll say this rightfully so, the functionality inside of the CJ4 regarding the Proline 21 has been absolutely phenomenal. Some items would look a little bit different if we were to be able to engage them, but from a user standpoint, I think this thing is looking and functioning very, very similar to what I would expect having, I don't know, a couple thousand hours of time flying on this avionics suite. This looks really, really good. The one thing I don't have is any time in a CJ4, so, but don't know how the airplane flies. It climbed really nicely there, but, you know, coming out. The descent was really nice, but I like the way this is functioning. So I've got nothing to complain about. All right, we're approaching our TOD at this time. In the real aircraft, there is a way to simply put the TOD up here. I don't know if this one would allow me. Yeah, it doesn't give me the opportunity to change the format here for the VNAV information. And I doubt. Put the altitudes on there. That's nice. That is proper. Speeds can be put up there. Here comes the path. It's already engaging. Let's go to the next page. Ooh, can I put my ring? For the altitude selector. It could give us the caret. We'll see if it shows up. On the path. If it does, let's pull it up over here on this one. The altitudes of those display, and then we're going to come over and we're going to click this ring. There it is. So this little ring here, or caret or banana, I guess it's called a banana, is what we always joke about it. It's going to show you the altitude at which you're going to hit any point. So whatever altitude you have selected. Right now we have 2,000 in the actual altimeter, which is going to stop us basically before we hit the runway. But 5,000 is the altitude that we're going down to. We're on VPAP. This number here is technically what's controlling, and it should show it for that number and not this one. But I'm not going to go through and have to reset this every time when I know that it's going to stop at 5,000 feet. So this one here is already dialed down. It's going to come all the way down to that. It's just showing this in the wrong spot. So if we were to keep this sitting at this rate, we would hit 2,000 feet at that point, is basically what it's showing you. It's great for trying to do some descent planning. You can use it when you're up at altitude, and you can basically check your work. So if you're not using, and it's very often that we don't use what's in the FMS here, we just calculate it in our head using the rule of 3 to come up with a descent plan profile for a 3-degree glide or a 3-degree descent plan. You can essentially calculate it up in your head based off of how many thousands of feet you need to lose. You can find out what your descent point needs to be, and then you can base off of your ground speed what your descent rate needs to be. It's pretty simple, but I'm not going to try to explain it right now because it'd be a bit much to explain right now, but it's very simple. Anywho's, just kind of looking at where we're at right now, you can use that if you wanted to find out what it's going to take to descend from our 5,000 feet where we're at right now. 4,000 feet before the next fixed at first. There's our next TOD. You'll have to use 1,000 feet. It's going to take 3 miles. So 3 miles before we reach first is when it should start coming down for a 3-degree glide slope. The computer's calculating it's a 2-degree glide slope, so it's actually going to be a little bit less. If you were to go into a 3-degree glide slope, it would push that point in a little bit closer. And then it would be based off of our ground speed, which is shown right here, 226 knots, divide that by 2. And you're looking, divided by 2, then multiply by 10. So you're looking at about 1,100 feet per minute in the descent in order to achieve that from a 3-mile fix before first. That's basically how it works out. Simple. Yeah, really, I've got nothing else to say. It's pretty simple. There's Phoenix downtown. Sky Harbor in front of us that we're flying over. You know, and I said that I was at Sky Harbor earlier. I'm going to have to check that because I may not have been at Sky Harbor. I'm not sure what airport that would have been. It was in about the position I would have expected for Sky Harbor at that time, but Sky Harbor is definitely 12 o'clock. And this should explain to you why it is that they have this arrival here in the way that they do. Because one of the issues that you have in Phoenix, besides the fact that actually seeing the Scottsdale airport can be kind of difficult, shouldn't be too bad inside of the sim because of the way the sim's set up. As it's right over in that direction. I think I might see it maybe up in this way, but we'll see. But because of where Phoenix Sky Harbor is, you end up with quite a few bits of air traffic coming in. This is rather congested airspace. But anyway, let's get not a big factor, but there's a nice view of Sky Harbor and airplanes coming in and landing. Or we zip across top. So we're already in that descent towards our next altitude. I see this little traffic alert coming up. Something that is interesting in the way this is set up. So this gives us the opportunity to have TA, RA, or standby. In the real aircraft, you can actually highlight TA and RA, so you'll get traffic advisories and resolution advisories. It's essentially a method used to prevent you from having a mid-air collision with another aircraft. But the functionality is just a little bit different here. You have TA, you have RA, or you have standby. You can turn it off. And in the real aircraft, you'd be flying it in TARA, like I said, or Terra mode, which provide traffic advisories and resolution advisories if the traffic alerting system detects a proximate aircraft that's going to be a threat to your aircraft and preventing you guys from running into each other. And it'll actually talk and communicate between the two transponders, giving you instructions for what to do, allowing the pilot to deviate from whatever their flight plan route is and initiate a climb or descent to avoid the other aircraft. And the other pilots in the other aircraft will be responding to their own RA that's going to be triggered, in which the two computers are talking to each other saying, you need to do this and do it right now. It's not an autopilot maneuver. It's not a matter of sitting up here and start turning wheels. No, you turn off the autopilot, you fly the airplane and get it away from whatever the danger and threat is. And do so in a nice, smooth manner that doesn't cause another potential collision with another aircraft. There we go. That looks like Scottsdale over that way. Right over there. Scottsdale is a pain in the butt to see in real life and in the sim, but that is it. That's where we're going to be headed. Yeah, there's no other way to say it. Scottsdale sucks trying to find it. There's also some terrain that's near Scottsdale, which is part of the reason I wanted to do this approach, because that should keep us safely away from the terrain as we make that actual approach in. Those mountains that are over there end up coming in very close to that 5-mile final if you were to fly straight into it. It shouldn't be a factor on this approach, but like I said, it would be something that would be concerning, and ATC has to work on keeping you away from the mountains. So. Alright, so here we are coming into class. Class is at 4,000 feet. Willem is also at 4,000 feet as an admiral buff, so that's over here. And then we're going to be going down to Eager, like our edgers, and that's at 3,300 feet. So we'll be maintaining this altitude for the next couple fixes around. There's really not a whole lot else. This is going to probably be kind of boring. We've been on the arrival for the last 50 years now, it feels like. Getting the tour of Phoenix. But, yeah, it's pretty straightforward here for the rest of the flight. I can't remember which airport this is. I know that there's one up here where they do a lot of flight training. Oh, gosh. My brain wants to say it was like Arrowhead, but it's not Arrowhead. It's, gosh, I cannot think of the name of it. Anyway, it's kind of nearby. You see it when you depart out of Scottsdale quite a bit. And it's another reason there's a speed limit on the departures in this area of 210 knots when you're flying outbound. And the other annoying part is when they're working with air traffic control, specifically departure control, they have to manage the aircraft that are coming out of that airport, managing the aircraft that are coming out of, it might be Deer Valley. I was going to say, yeah, it might be Deer Valley. You have to manage the aircraft that are coming out of Scottsdale and the aircraft that are coming out of Phoenix all at the same time, and they're all trying to do something slightly different. And I've heard some controllers who've got a little worked up against pilots who were being kind of obstinate about what they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. And apparently the idea of, cooperate and graduate didn't sit well. Everyone has a place that they want to be and starts thinking, hey, I'm the most important guy up here. Everyone's got a job to do, including the controller who's trying to keep you safe. So give them some grace, listen to them. You know, they've got a lot of things they're trying to work through, and you're a cog in the wheel. But being nice will get you a little bit further. You're just trying to be pushing buttons everywhere. All right. We have an aircraft right there. You can see it on our TCAS, 600 feet below us to our left. If you look, you can see it over there. Can't tell what it is, but it's an airplane, and it's flying behind us. All right, there's our next Todd. That's for Eager at 3,300 feet. Now, the nice thing about flying this approach inside of the RNAV, as the aircraft slows down, the airplane's going to continuously retrim. And as long as the autopilot is on and the airplane's retrimming, you won't have a situation where the airplane's essentially, and I'm going to say out of control, but off speed and out of trim. So when you finally do kick the autopilot off, the airplane is going to be flying essentially perfectly fine straight down to the runway. I'm going to start pulling the power back here in an attempt to get us ready for landing. So we're going to go ahead and start slowing up ever so slightly. As you can tell, that terrain's out there. You can see it's just past where that turn's going to be. So we're going to let this airplane start slowing down. Flat 15 speeds listed right here, 200 knots. So once we get down to 200 knots, we're going to go ahead and put those first 15 degrees of flaps in. There's our runway. You can see the point right there with the real end identifier lights showing up. All right, there's flat 15 speed. Flaps are on the move, 15 is indicated. See the airplane kind of recover from that pitch attitude change as we make the turn inbound. I'm going to go ahead and kind of park the view somewhere close to there.
Altitude.
In fact, I can use my other controller to do that and to look while I fly. All right, gears coming down, making the turn inbound here to Danobe. And as we continue this turn around, we're going to eventually see a runway in front of us. All right, we're below flaps 35 speed. That's not just flaps coming in. All right, flaps are now down, gears down, 3 green lights. Let the airplane keep slowing down towards the approach speed. Go ahead and turn off our autopilot here in just a couple seconds. Let the airplane get kind of stabilized on speed. Got a big wind correction.
Autopilot.
All right, auto's off. A little low on the pappies. The airplane, like I said, is pretty well trimmed out. My flight director's not going to help me out on that. I'm going to turn that off. A little bit right of the center line. We'll go ahead and try to correct. I'm not going to promise center line when we land. We're not in VR, and I don't have good rudders. But we're going to try our best. Correct on the speed a little bit. Wind seemed to have gotten a little bit more stable. Center line's over there to the right, but not too terrible. All right, we'll start slowing the airplane down. We're not going to make Charlie. I'm just going to roll it to the next one here, and we'll make the left turn. I could have sworn that the one I just saw said Charlie, but here's the one that does say Charlie. The left turn here. On the brakes. Get the airplane down to taxi speed, and then make the left turn. Not sure what the heck that funky little shape is. Welcome to the desert. Truthfully, as a guy who's flown into Scottsdale quite a bit, it's hot as all get out without the beautiful charm that I get from Tucson. So if you had me choosing, I'd still be in Tucson. All right, first officer on the other side is going to put up the flaps. Gear stays down, obviously. Get some of these lights off. Taxi light on instead. And hopefully that gives you a little rundown as to how the avionics work inside of the CJ4. If you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments. I'll try to respond to you. If you've got a suggestion or anything else you'd like to see, or comments that you've had from your own experiences flying these type of airplanes, let me know. If I'm screwing everything up on the CJ4, like I said, I don't have any experience flying this particular aircraft, feel free to let me know. I'd love to learn more. I'm always interested in learning more information about flying and flying safely, and even simming. I don't get the opportunity to fly every airplane that's out there. Only the ones that my company happens to have and pays me to fly, as well as the airplanes that I've been lucky enough to fly over the years as I was gaining experience. So anyway, that's going to basically conclude this one. And like I said, thank you guys for watching. Happy simming and safe flying out there. Until the next time, we'll see you soon.